Well, good afternoon. My name is Patrick Egan, and I want to welcome you to the week two of Beyond the Hype, AI Basics, Benefits, and Big Questions. Our sessions are being recorded, which is for tonight's class, which is unique for CRI, so that you can review the material between sessions, or if you need to be absent during one of the classes, you can review the sessions. And for that reason, we are muting all of the participants because that interferes a little with the recording process. But all questions are welcomed in the chat. And now I'd like to turn it over to Terry Gray. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Pat. Let's get rolling here. Pat mentioned we're recording, and as usual, questions in chat. And we're going to start today with our theme for the week with a little music.
Let's get practical. Practical, I wanna get practical. Let's get into practical. Let me hear your chopper talk. Your chopper talk. Let me hear your chopper talk. Let's get practical. Practical, I wanna get practical. Let's get into practical. Let me hear your chopper talk. Your chopper talk. Let me hear your chopper talk.
All right. Let's hear our chatbot talk. I'm going to conjure up Mr. Gemini on my phone here. And let's see if we can have a conversation. Well, let's go to live mode. Mr. Gemini, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. How can I help you there?
Well, I'm teaching a class with about 75 people in it on practical uses for AI. And we're here in Seattle, where it's kind of rainy, although we have folks from sunny parts of the country participating as well. But I was just wondering if you be willing to perhaps create and recite a brief poem appropriate for the occasion?
Absolutely, I can do that. Here's a little something. In rainy Seattle, where knowledge is keen, a class on AI, a vibrant scene. From sunny shores to skies of soft gray, we gather to learn and explore the AI way. Does that sound good?
That sounds perfect. Thank you very much. Now, one of the things I thought you might do for us that would be relevant to the theme was tell us a little bit about Ray Kurzweil. Why is he considered an expert? What are his creds, and what are his current views on the challenges ahead for AI?
Ray Kurzweil is quite well regarded in the AI field. He's a computer scientist, inventor, and futurist known for his predictions about technology and society. He's written several books and has a background in areas like speech recognition and computer vision, which make him a credible voice. As for his current views on challenges for AI, he acknowledges that there are risks involved, like the potential for technology to be used for harmful purposes, but he generally maintains an optimistic outlook. He believes that we have the ability to manage these risks while continuing to reap the benefits of AI. Do you have any more questions about him?
Yes, I understand he's written quite a bit about the singularity. What is that, and why should we care?
The singularity, as Kurzweil sees it, is a point in the future where technological advancements, especially in artificial intelligence, accelerate so rapidly that they become unpredictable and transformative. He believes that this could lead to machines surpassing human intelligence and potentially even altering our biology. We should care because it could profoundly impact our future, affecting everything from our daily lives to the very nature of human existence. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think he's right that there's definitely concerns. I think he tends to be in the pretty optimistic camp. If I remember correctly, he thought we might have super intelligence that was spliced into our brains to enhance our abilities. Is that right?
That's right. He does have a vision where we merge with AI, potentially enhancing our own intelligence and capabilities. It's a pretty far reaching idea, and one that sparks a lot of discussion. What aspects of that vision are you most curious about?
Well, I want to shift gears now and ask you to help out on a much more mundane level. Imagine, if you will, that I might be charged with entertaining a 5-year-old girl for a couple of hours, and I have no clue how to do that. Would you have any suggestions for me?
Oh, absolutely. 5-year-old girls love activities that involve creativity and imagination. How about some classic things like drawing or coloring? You could even try some simple puzzles or building things with blocks. If she likes animals, maybe making some animal puppets with paper would be fun. What kind of things do you usually enjoy?
Well, it's been a while since I've done those activities, but I'm also curious are there things that this person could interact with you and you could directly uh, uh, provide some entertainment if I was holding the phone, so to speak.
Oh, definitely. If you hold the phone, I can tell her stories. We could play a simple game like I Spy, or maybe even have a conversation about her favorite things. What do you think?
Okay, that sounds good. And I think that's all that I want to ask you about for now. So we'll sign off.
All right. It was a pleasure talking with you. Have a great time with the 5-year-old, and let me know if anything else comes up. Bye.
Okay, so we have heard our chatbot talk. That's the Gemini live mode. And I used an application on my Pixel phone to do that. Uh, and there are other chatbots that have something similar, ChatGPT, for example. So let's move on to the plan. My week 2 schedule here is a little different than what I imagined it was when I put the first slides together. Uh, and let's go into more detail on that. So we'll start out with some use cases of the kinds of things you might use this stuff for. And then we'll get into music and video and image creation and so on. And then before our Q&A and break, we'll talk about what kinds of AI and how much they cost. So here's some of the things that I've been using generative AI for the last couple of years. Um, and I'm not going to read you the list. Um, on the things that I have not used it for, one of the more intriguing ones is the garden planning. And I mention that because I heard a talk about using AI a year or so back, and one of the things this fellow talked about was how his family had decided to go vegan, and so he took all of his uh, open seed pad pockets or packets of seeds, turned them put them on a table so that you could see the backside with all the details of when to plant them and so on. Took a picture of that, fed that into ChatGPT and asked it to come up with both a planting plan and a menu plan for how they could harvest and what they could do with the uh, produce coming from that. I thought that was pretty innovative. So I don't think we need to dwell on this list anymore at the moment. Here's another one that's really there for reference. It just gives some examples of the kinds of things that you could do in different categories. So for example, under learning, there's practice scenarios. You could ask the AI to take a role in a different language, and you could practice your skills on that. And then you could also have it create study guides, quizzes, so on and so forth. Uh, Summarizing and analysis of documents is definitely one of the major things that it's good for. So, all right, let's start by talking about prompting principles. Prompting, of course, is what you're typing in or speaking to the chatbot. And here's some examples for creating text. And one scenario is if you are a writer and you can't think of anything, you can ask for ideas. You might have a letter or an email you need to write, and you might need some help with the first draft, or you might actually have a first draft and you'd like to ask for help in refining it. You could then feed what you have to the chatbot and say, please offer suggestions for improvement. I'd like to make sure that it has these characteristics of being friendly but firm, for example, or written for a particular age group or other group, etc. And role playing is another scenario where you can ask the chatbot to be the recipient of your sales pitch and see how that goes. So this is just an example of how you could perhaps iteratively come up with better results by adding more detail. Pretty obvious. There are certain scenarios where you don't have to be that detailed, and others where the more detailed you are, the better results you're going to get. So here's just a couple of examples that kind of illustrate that same idea. So here's some of the general principles. Framing means telling it what you want it to do, what kind of persona do you want it to take on for the interaction. And of course, as we discussed, being specific and also in terms of format, tell it what kind of output do you want? Do you want a set of slides or an outline or a document of a certain length, etc. And you could specify the level of comprehension of your readers. Is this for 10-year-olds or for professionals or what have you? And it's better to speak positively, just as you might to people, as opposed to what not to do. There's some exceptions where it's done something and you need to tell it to not do whatever it just did. So moving on, let's talk about music and video. I'm going to start with the backstory for the theme song. My initial thought was, wouldn't it be fun to create a parody of Olivia Newton-John's Let's Get Physical with the modified lyrics, Let's Get Practical. Unfortunately, after I downloaded the original music and carved out a 30-second piece for the chorus, the tools that I was using, one said, this seems to violate our terms of agreement with respect to copyright use, even though 30 seconds of parody should be okay. Another one said, if you don't own this document or this music that you're uploading, fire and brimstone will greet you in the morning, or words to that effect. So decided to go on plan B, which is to take the parody lyrics and feed them into a couple of different AI music generators. And I put the prompts that I used below. Then I picked the best one and then did some minor editing to add a fade out. And then I asked Gemini to create several companion images that were appropriate. And one of the prompts I used for that was imagine a female disco singer talking to a chatbot and saying, let's get practical. So that's how that first slide came about. Now, this is another example of how you could use AI. A year and a half ago, I had this idea that I had a bunch of old songs I'd written, and maybe it would be fun to turn them into music videos. And so I decided to try that, and I used generative AI to create images to go for the video, because I didn't want to just have one static image for the whole thing. And so I'm going to play a little bit of this for you. I won't force you to endure the whole thing, but I'd like you to pay attention to the quality of the images, because this was a year and a half ago, and things have come a long ways since then. And you can see in this thumbnail here, the face of the fellow is a little bit off. But let's go forward here. And let me adjust our settings for video, because I forgot we were doing this one. We're optimizing for video sharing now. And I'll just do a couple of minutes of this.
Well, I'm walking in those leadership shoes, just kicking down that road till I blow a fuse. Got those head down, can't cry, no time to even try leadership blues. So stop the presses, here's the truth, I need to find some new leadership shoes. Yes, I'm knocking on that leadership door. Don't know why I keep coming back for more. My baby says I work too much, my bosses get a clue. I've got my 20 years in, but still I'm paying dues. Somebody better tell me where to find a good brew, 'cause I'm talking about those leadership blues. Just going round in circles, wondering what to do. Those petabytes and teraflops are really cool, but complexity is growing like a Georgia kudzu, and Amazon and Google are stealing our crews. That's why we're talking about those leadership blues.
Okay, so there are two things I wanted you to notice. One was the quality of the imagery. This was all done with AI generation about 1.5 years ago. But there's one other reason that I wanted to share this with you, because it illustrates one of the pitfalls of using AI tools. This was done in honor of an IT leadership program I went to some years back. And I sent my first version of this to the fellow that had run it years before. And he said, "Oh, that's very nice, but there's no way I could show that to my team." And the reason was that in the first version I did, everybody in it was a white male. And I had just obliviously accepted what the defaults were for many of these image generation tools. And so I was quite embarrassed for that realization. I went back and fixed that. But that is an illustration of the bias that is implicit in some of these models. And they're not as bad as they were, but that's something to watch out for when you are working with these. So now for something brand new, we have the introduction of Sora 2, which is the latest video generation model from OpenAI. And there's two things I'm going to mention before I show this little promo clip. One is that it introduces the concept of cameos, where you can upload a picture of yourself and then specify in text some scenario or some scene or some story that you want to be in, and it will put you in that synthesized story. And the other thing is that it will provide music and it will synchronize audio with your speaking in the video. So let's have a look at their promotional blurb here.
One year ago, Sora 1 redefined what was possible with moving images. Today, we're announcing the Sora app, powered by the all-new Sora 2. It's the most powerful imagination engine ever built. And it's packed with new features. I'll pass it to Bill for more details.
Now every video comes with sound.
Sora 2 is also the state-of-the-art for motion, physics IQ, and body mechanics, marking a giant leap forward in realism.
And we're introducing Cameo, giving you the power to step into any world or scene and letting your friends cast you in theirs.
On the path to AGI, the gains aren't just about productivity. It's about creating new possibilities.
It's also about creativity and joy. 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's why we're launching Sora 2 inside the Sora app, allowing everyone to push the limits of their imagination and create in ways we never thought possible.
Hey, I think you'll agree that that's pretty impressive from a technical perspective. But it is also controversial. It's kind of their answer to TikTok with really short videos, but they're all synthetic, they're all AI generated, where you can choose to be the star or a willing friend can be. And it's too soon to tell what the sociological implications of this tool are, but it's certainly impressive from a technical point of view. So let's now do the more mundane thing of just talking about image creation, still image creation. And on the way to that segment, let's remember to wish ChatGPT a birthday. We're a little early, but it was 30 November 2022 when OpenAI released ChatGPT to the world. And when I did this class in 2023, one of the sessions was on November 30th. And so I thought it would be appropriate to wish ChatGPT a happy birthday on year one. And this was the generated image that I was able to get from Google's AI at the moment. You'll notice that there's something a little bit strange about the candle on the cake there. That was AI in 2023. I repeated the exercise recently, and you'll see that the quality has improved rather substantially in the last year or so. So you can clearly tell that the capabilities have been upgraded. In fact, you might even argue that the Achilles heel is that it's too perfect. But it's pretty impressive how far it's come. Now, this was something I did a couple of years ago, asking one of the tools, at that time Google called theirs the Duet AI image generator, to create a cat in the style of Rothko. And this is what I got. Now, when I repeated that experiment, we find that ChatGPT and Microsoft's Copilot and Google's Gemini have some different views of what Rothko cat should look like. But it's interesting that ChatGPT and MS Copilot are pretty similar, except for the color scheme. And that's not too surprising because Microsoft is using a lot of the same code that ChatGPT has. So now you saw last week I had created some images, and I just wanted to show you the description that I used to create those images. I don't want you to read them. I just want you to notice that they're fairly detailed. And what might not be obvious is that this is the result of multiple iterations of trying different things and finding problems and then going back and iterating with more details until I got what I wanted. And this is very, very typical of the process that you might go through in working with some of these image models. And here's two more examples. The process can be a little frustrating sometimes, as we'll see here. I decided I wanted to change the message on that sign in this particular case. And so I said, 2. In this case, it was the Google model, Gemini, said, on the uploaded image, change the words on the sign from the synthesizing to is near to save the Anthropocene, which it did. But I didn't like the spacing too much. And so I thought, well, I'll just have it add a little bit more text. So now it says save the Anthropocene from AI, which of course is the thing that would take us out of the Anthropocene. But here's an interesting thing. I really wanted to try to get it to reposition the text, the save the Anthropocene text, without necessarily adding a line. And I tried several times to get it to do that. And each time it said, I understand and I will do what you say. And then it produced exactly the same image. And this was with Google. Then I tried to do the same thing with ChatGPT, and it kind of made the picture even worse. And then finally apologized and said that this was really hard and it didn't know how to do it. But if I appreciate it, it would give me instructions on how to make that change in a conventional image editor, which I thought was nice of it. Okay, and then to get really crazy here, at one point, Gemini offered to create an image of me with an 80s style makeover. What the heck? Let's try it. So that was the result. Looks just like me in the 80s. Not. I don't think my hair was white and gray back that early, but it's a interesting exercise. And then it also offered to create a image of a diner on Mars, which sort of interesting because there are people inside with no helmets, so there must be an airlock there. So I wonder how they get into their spaceships. Oh well, details. Now, here's an example of how you can change the prompts and get different results. So picture of a dog, picture of a golden retriever in a park, and then a more detailed photorealistic happy golden retriever catching a red frisbee midair sunny park action shot. Now, this is what the AI was actually going to do on its own, a slightly different set of instructions. Said that wanted to start with a generic, low quality, slightly weird AI image of a dog. The goal is for it to look basic and then proceed to a nice but standard AI generated image of a golden retriever in a park, and then to the photorealistic, high quality dynamic AI image there, complete with background blurring, etc. So it's the point of this was to show that you can get much more detailed in your instructions. In some cases, you don't necessarily need or want that, and sometimes the general request is just fine. So there are a bunch of different sites that specialize in AI image processing. Midjourney is certainly one of the best known. And it's to explore these, and you can see that it was quite diverse in its type of styles. And some of these have different, I don't know if they cater to different groups or different genres, but I noticed one of them uh, was pretty broad in terms of the types of images, and some of them had a lot of female warriors on it. But the quality is quite stunning on many of these, and it's worth a look if you have some time. Now, these are generally created from text prompts. Uh, Now, the newer ones can take an image as a starting point and then adapt that. But in most cases, they're not just searching for some existing image, uh, but there are cases where a training image that's part of their training process can find its way out in the output, and that's embarrassing for the company if it's a copyrighted image, for example, and there have been lawsuits about that sort of thing. So here's an example of images that I regret to inform are almost certainly AI created. Um, so I'd love to accept them at face value, but I am afraid they're probably not. So let's talk a little bit about how you might use AI tools for image restoration. And as my example, we'll use this photo of my beloved Manx dune buggy, circa 1967. And as you can see, it's a terrible picture. And so the question is, what can we do to clean that up using AI? Well, it's been an interesting adventure to do that. So here's one variation that doesn't change the car image much, but it does remove the background. Now, here's another example where the car has been pretty nicely cleaned up. The only thing that I'll point out is that the rear tail light on the left is missing its lens, and the right rear tail light is missing altogether. But other than that, it's pretty good. Now you'll notice that the tires look much better than the ones in the original, because the original was basically just noise that it couldn't figure out what to do with. So it put on new tires, which I thought was very nice of it. So this is the original image with I think this was probably in Google Slides, where I just said remove the background, and you see that it didn't completely remove the background. If you look through the car, you can see the background is still there. Now, here's a little better background removal, but it also removed the side flap on the driver's side and thought it was transparent. And so you can see into the car and a portion that was not at all visible in the original. So that's not exactly a feature. And here's one of the better results of AI tuning. Unfortunately, it couldn't get the tailpipe quite right, so I finally gave up and just said, okay, go with a simple tailpipe. And it didn't eliminate the left rear lens, but it did manage to lose the right rear taillight assembly when it was redoing the background. So this is this was when it tried to be creative with replacing the tailpipe, and it couldn't bring it to just itself to just use the original image. It decided to fabricate its idea of a muffler assembly, which didn't suit me at all. So here's another fabrication. There was a bit of a reflection in one of the images, which it then confabulated into an extra windshield coming out of the hood. So that's kind of interesting, but not useful. And here is another case where it didn't understand the left flap, the left door, which was a black flap for half of it, and then plexiglass above. So you can come up with some stunning results, but you have to be careful. And of course, you saw these before where it removed the background and added a friendly alien in the process. So now we ask the question of which kind of AI should you use and how much do they cost? Ethan Mollick, who I quoted last week as he's the source of the line about the way you should think about AI as being a very helpful intern that will sometime lie to you. He has a recent article about the fact that we are going to have to do a better job of assessing which model from these different vendors is going to be best matched for your needs, because they're not all the same. And so he says you're going to need to interview your AI. And he came up with a chart that you can probably not read any details on, but it's his idea based on some recent data on how people use AI and to figure out where the free versions of the models are probably just fine and where it's worth spending more money. And what's interesting to me is that the column under toward the right, almost the rightmost one, technical help, is where he said you really should always use the most advanced model because they can do a lot more stuff. So you can study that on the slide deck for your leisure, but there's certain areas where the free one is just fine, and other areas where he thinks it's worth paying some money. So everything that I've done generally is with the free models, but I did recently succumb to my habit of buying Chromebooks every year or so, whether I need to or not, because Costco had one on sale last month. And part of the deal was that you got a year of free access to the pro level of Google Gemini. And so I've just been playing with that for the last week or so. And I haven't got an assessment of my own yet of how much difference it makes, but we'll talk about that more in a minute. But here's the breakdown on the left. These major models come in three cost tiers. The free level, which is plenty good for messing around and trying things and getting useful information. And then the $20 level, which has different names from different companies. And then the $200 a month level, which there are certainly testimonials from people that I've read that say it's worth it for the time I save. I came across one recently by a fellow who has a blog, and he does programming not as his primary gig, but definitely as part of his world. And he said that the $200, which he may not keep going perpetually, but at least for a while, made him much, much more productive. And he was able to do several major projects in a week that would have taken him months without these advanced tools. Now, there are other tools that are specific for different application areas, like generating art, Midjourney being a good example of that. And some of those programs start like at $10 a month. And some of them have models like you can buy credits and use credits for different kinds of applications at different levels of quality. The graphic on the right is Ethan Mollick's assessment of the levels of different models, where you have a standard model and then you have the more advanced ones that are more agentic and that they know how to actually do things for you, not just give you answers. And then the so-called wizard level models that can really do a lot of analysis and reasoning and so on, more than the smaller models can. All right, so we're going to stop now and take some questions. I see we have quite a few. So let me go back here. Okay, I'm sorry some folks were not able to hear the chatbot talking clearly. I'll see if in the video, the recording, I might be able to clean that up if you want to go back later and see if it's better. If you ask the chatbot the exact same questions tomorrow, would it tell you the exact same things? The answer to that is almost certainly no. And the reason for that is because of the way these systems are designed. The architecture of these large language models is based on this notion of the stochastic parrot. That is to say, it mimics things based on probability. And so it assesses lots and lots of information, largely from the internet, and then you give it a question and it applies its algorithms, which include some probability, and it gives you what it thinks is a good fit, but not necessarily the only good fit. And if you ask it the same thing again, you're likely to get a very different result. There is a concept called temperature, which is a term of art in these large language models that adjusts how likely it is to give you the same kind of answer versus a very different answer. If you're doing creative things like generating images or short stories, you might want to have it give you wildly different options. If you're doing something that's more oriented toward being factual, then you want to have higher certainty, and you might turn the temperature down. You don't always get to control that directly, but sometimes you can influence it by the way you state your prompt. That you would like only highly certain answers, for example. So in general, no, you will not get the same thing. And in the case of creative activities, that's a feature, not a bug. In the case of factual types of discovery, it's not so much a feature. Okay, my guess is that chatbot would have taken in much more data by tomorrow and would not say exactly the same thing. Yes and no. The models typically have a date which is the limit of what they have been trained on. Now, as I mentioned briefly last week, there are ways that date can be exceeded. So sometimes you'll ask a question of a chatbot and it will say, I'm sorry, my training data only goes up to January of 2025. Uh, and in other cases, it will actually reach out to the web now and try to answer your question, even though it doesn't have the answer in its training data. So you can't generalize too much on that, but the original base training has a limited date, but there are techniques that are in common use now called retrieval augmented generation, RAG, as one example, where it can supplement its training data with more current information. In general, you're definitely going to get different answers the next day because of the nature of the beast being probabilistic, and potentially if it's using RAG or some other mechanism to get current data, then the world could have changed from yesterday too. How do you feed material into AI to do something with it, a draft of something? So when you're interacting with a chatbot, it's a little different on the app on your phone, but I usually use the web version of these. Uh, you'll get a block in the middle, and I'll show you that in a minute. In fact, I could do that right now, I think. Let's see here. If I drag this over here, yeah, you can see what I'm typing. So if I type in here, let's say gemini.google.com. So I'm now talking to the Google chatbot called Gemini. And right here, I could say, what's the weather in New York today? So this is a case where its original training data doesn't have today's weather, but it knows how to go out and ask that question. So here's the result for the weather in New York. So if I wanted it to review a document, for example, I could click on this plus sign down here, and I could upload a file that was on my computer or add it from Google Drive, since this is a Google product. Or I could also just paste it in to this place here where it says Ask Gemini. So let's move that out of the way. Same thing with images. You can upload the image. Can't paste that in typically, but you can upload the image that you want it to look at or modify. Let's see here. Is it possible that AI was intentionally uncooperative in compiling the image for Save the Anthropocene from AI and has made note of your name? I'm not willing to give the AI that much credit at this point. It is still basically a pattern matcher. It is not a conscious entity. It does not have sentience. It does not have its own intent, but it can simulate those really well. How can you tell for sure if an image is AI generated? The answer is that you and I would have a very, very difficult time telling for sure whether an AI image is generated. Now, there are a lot of people working on trying to have tools that can tell you, and they analyze the bit patterns of the image and they look for metadata that might give you hints. For example, Google is now using some marks in the metadata that say that this is AI generated, and those wouldn't be obvious in the casual observer. But it's getting harder and harder. The AI generated images are really, really difficult to tell from a normal photograph these days. There are, if you have the time to look at it, with the laboratory tools, so to speak, the tools that will look at a pattern at the pixel level, you may be able to figure out the patterns that are most likely to have been generated by AI. That's true of text as well. I was just reading an article the other day that one way these tools can discern whether you're dealing with a AI response, we're talking text now rather than images, is that they tend to not be as extreme in their verbiage as actual humans can be. So the headline was something that training these chatbots to be more toxic has been difficult. We can't quite apparently get them to be as nasty as real humans can be. And that's one telltale sign that you're dealing with a chatbot rather than an angry human. AI draws its content from a nebulous universe of material. Might that universe be manipulated, such as by censorship? You can certainly train a chatbot on very selective information. And in fact, you can do post-training or model refinement in a way that would most certainly bias the chatbot, whether it was imagery or text. No question that that is possible. Some people have accused at least one of the major chatbots, which is Grok from Elon Musk's company, XAI, of having been trained to respond to his view of the world. There's actually some interesting things that happened with that chatbot last summer, where it kind of went berserk and really started spewing some evil stuff. And they tried to update it, and I remember reading that in the updated version, somebody trolled it and saying, "Well, what kind of people would be worth getting the death penalty?" And Elon's name came up as one of the answers to that. So they had to do a little bit more work on their chatbot to neutralize it. But the whole project that they're doing of Grokopedia in response to believing that Wikipedia was too woke gives you an idea of how these things can be slanted, no question about it. And you can also run into that just with a normal model by this problem I mentioned briefly last week, what's called prompt injection, where you can surreptitiously put some information into the model before the actual user gets their stuff in, and it will condition the model to respond in a certain way, which is a security issue that is unsolved at this point. It's a very serious problem. Okay, next. Do these products get to know specific users over time and adjust their responses accordingly? If so, is this by design? That's one of the differentiating points between the different levels of these offerings. The free ones do not have what's called a very big context window, so they can't remember much in the way of previous conversations. But the newer ones, that size of the amount that they can sort of reach back and remember has gone up. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is that when you're using these chatbots, they all encourage you to log in and create an account. Well, they have various reasons for that. One of them is that they would like to use your input and its response as a way of helping them improve the product. But it's also a way for you to be able to keep track of previous conversations if you ever want to go back and look at them. As I found for this class, I wanted to do a lot. And there were some of the conversations I had done without logging in. So there was no history, no memory of that. So over time, I believe it is clearly the intent of the makers of these tools to have their models get to know you and know your preferences and be able to tune their responses to what you like. So, for example, the new browser from OpenAI that's competing with Google Chrome and Microsoft Bing and Edge and so on, that browser very explicitly has places for you to say you want to let it get access to your email history and various other documents on your desktop so that it can give you better results. Now, that's also in the what could possibly go wrong category when it's capable of going on taking actions on your behalf with their agentic capabilities, but that's a different story. So the short answer is more and more it is the case, and yes, by design, but there are limitations, technical limitations on how much the smaller models can essentially remember. As the data management companies scramble to build energy-consuming centers, the subscription and free users of AI adding to the energy demand by the mundane and inane questions posed by non-commercial amateur users. In a word, yes. As a matter of fact, there have been articles written about whether you should say thank you and please and so on to your friendly chatbot. And Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT, and who you saw in that promo video for Sora 2, is on record as saying that I don't remember the number, but it was a significant number of dollars that it cost them to process those please and thank yous. But he, for one, wants us to keep doing that because it keeps our society more civil. I'm putting a few words in his mouth, but I think that was the gist of it. And you ask a chatbot whether it has been trained to favor one perspective over another. For example, no Democrats. Would it answer honestly? Well, that's a good question. You can certainly ask it the question. Let's see what Gemini would say. Let's say, has Gemini been trained to favor one political party over another? And how would I know? You'll notice it's giving you some information about the steps it's going through. And this is the pro model that normally costs $20 a month that I got as part of buying that Chromebook the other month. So it's saying, as an AI, I'm not trained to have political opinions, beliefs, or partisan loyalties. My purpose is to be a helpful and neutral tool. However, the question of inherent bias in AI is a critical and complex one. Here's a breakdown of the politics guiding my responses and how you can assess them. So Google's official policy is to be neutral. Bias in the model is a significant challenge. Training data, massive data set of text from the public internet, fine-tuning process after initial training models are fine-tuned by human reviewers to make them safer and more helpful. This process, which aims to reduce harmful biases like racism or hate speech, can itself introduce different, more subtle bias. There have been public criticism and incidents, such as an image generation feature that produced historically inaccurate images, which Google CEO called completely unacceptable and biased. So that highlights the challenge of perfect neutrality. How can you test for it? This is the most important part of your question. And you're right to be critical and evaluate the output. There is no single bias score, but researchers and users use several methods to test for political bias in AI models. So I'll leave that there. If you are interested, I will be happy to forward the full answer out to the group. Let's see here. Obama speaks directly to us in Hope in Motion video on YouTube. Very well done, but lacking some of his particular subtle head facial speaking mannerisms. The speaking mouth, much better in general, however. Still, for the first time, I'm only 80% sure it is AI. Okay, so noted. I haven't seen that particular one. But the risk of people putting out political videos where a candidate is purported to say things they never said is a real and present danger. So be wary of whatever you see. Check your sources, as I like to say. Okay, I think that is the end of the questions for now. So I have run a little bit over. So let's take a 5-minute break and resume at 5:11. All right, let's get started again here. I want to talk to you about a tool called Notebook LM, which is a product from Google. And I asked Gemini to describe what it was. And its answer is it's a personal AI research assistant that helps you understand, synthesize, and generate new content based on your own uploaded sources, like documents, notes, and links. It creates a personalized knowledge base for you to explore, summarize, and ask questions about your materials. And the really important characteristic of Notebook LM is it's grounded. And what that means is that it doesn't look for answers in its entire training database or the World Wide Web. It only looks at the source documents that you provide. So I asked Gemini, how reliably is it going to answer questions, or does it also hallucinate, just like other models? And I was impressed by the answer it gave. It says rarely is the most accurate term, and it says that in the studies that where these things are compared, it only hallucinates 13% of the time, as opposed to 40% for Gemini and ChatGPT. It does point out that it's not necessarily inventing false facts, but it might be overconfident in how it's interpreting certain things or making mistakes in reasoning. And there's a feature called audio overviews, which I'll show you in just a minute, that tends to be a little bit less factual in some cases. I had it do one of my lectures last year, and it mistook me for a UC Berkeley professor whose first name was the same as mine, but not my last name. So it's not perfect, but it's still a very, very useful tool. So let's discuss some of the things that I have used it for. Summarizing long documents or slide decks is certainly one of the strong suits. For example, a while back, I asked it to summarize Project 2025, and I thought it did a pretty credible job of that. And by the way, I had asked several tools, this was last spring, I think, to do that. And some of them said, well, it's too big for me to consume in one chunk. So this gets back to the earlier question about the amount of information it can handle and what it can remember. And this is called the context window. And that's one of the things that you see growing over time as the models become more advanced, and also the more expensive models that you have to pay for have larger context windows and can absorb bigger documents. I've used it for summarizing videos and organizing and restructuring information, such as I was using for preparing this class. I've had it create some audio overviews that I thought were useful, although the normal default motif of two hosts that are talking to each other, sometimes there's a little too much fluff in there for me. But they're starting to add more options. And then transcribing and summarizing audio interviews I found extremely useful. And there's a concept of mind maps that is useful where, well, I'll show you one here in a minute. So if we go look at Notebook LM, I just log into Notebook LM in my account. It's got featured notebooks that are publicly available from others. And then here's some of my own that I've created over the last year or so. And here's one that is about the world's largest gigafactory for AI. And this is based on a YouTube video. And it was a long enough video that I didn't want to listen to it. So I asked Notebook LM to look at it. And what it did was it actually took the generated transcript and analyzed that. And then it provided a summary for me. And I could now ask questions. And it always provides a couple of sample questions that you could ask, like how does Colossus 2 power and cooling infrastructure reshape industry standards? So this is the name of a really super gigantic data center that's being built. And what I did do is I asked it to do an audio brief, and it's pretty short. I'll give you a little sample of it here.
This is the brief on xAI's Colossus 2 AI Gigafactory. You know, the race for smarter AI is kind of shifted. It's not just data centers, it's AI gigafactories now, like power plants for AI. xAI's Colossus 2 is the biggest example, built super fast in only 6 months. So what's the deal? 3 key things. First, it really comes down to power. Getting enough juice is the main bottleneck, turning AI labs into energy operations. Colossus 2 needs a massive 1.2 gigawatts, enough for over 2 million homes. So xAI needed a former power plant site, special turbines, and huge batteries, like Tesla Megapacks, just to guarantee stable power and prevent crashes from tiny voltage dips. Second, that kind of power means extreme cooling is essential. A gigawatt facility generates a gigawatt of heat, so managing water without draining local resources is key. Colossus 2 built its own water factory, the world's largest of its kind, recycling 13 million gallons of city wastewater daily purely for cooling. Finally, all that compute needs perfect networking. Colossus 2 packs over 550,000 GPUs, delivering 50 exaflops. That's 7 times the world's top 10 supercomputers combined. Linking when
Okay, that gives you the idea. I find this a very useful feature. Now, if you ask it for the longer one with the 2 hosts going back and forth, that can be interesting too, especially when there's 2 points of view or more than one person that's talking. But that's one of the features. So if I go back here. And let's see here. Oh, okay. So this is an interesting case. I got into a bit of a debate with Gemini. I started, in fact, maybe I can bring that up here so you can see it. Let's just drag Gemini over here. And okay, where is it? I think that's it. Yes, here we go. AI's impact on search and ads. So I started the conversation by saying, will AI subsume search and destroy the ad-based economic model of the free internet? And we had, I think, a pretty good response. And then I noticed that there's been a big shift from free ad-based websites to subscriptions and paywalls. Is it fair to say that that's a result of this phenomena? And basically the answer is yes. And then I said, aren't there, why not use more micropayments, for example? And so gave a good response to that. And then I asked it to create a document concatenating all of these responses together, which it did, and which I then, come on, out of the way, which I then imported into Notebook LM. And then I asked Notebook LM to create a audio brief of that entire conversation, which I'll play a little sample of again.
This is the brief on how AI is really speeding up the internet's move away from ads and towards subscriptions. So, AI is basically changing the whole game between search and, the stuff you read online. It's a huge economic threat, and it's pushing publishers to totally rethink how they earn a living. And this, it changes everything about the free internet we're used to. Okay, let's dive into the 3 big things happening here. First up, the zero-click revenue crisis. Basically, AI summaries right on Google answer your question without you needing to click, so boom. Publisher website traffic, their click-through rates can drop like a rock, sometimes over 30%. That ad money pipeline just gets choked off. Right, so if ad traffic's tanking, what do? Second, they're going all in on subscriptions. Makes sense, right? It means steady, predictable money, and customers who stick around are worth more over time. That's the customer lifetime value, or CLV. Plus, subscriptions give them control, insulating them from algorithm changes. It's about owning that reader relationship now. And finally, you might wonder, why not just paper article, like 25 cents a pop? People ask for it. Well, it hasn't really worked out. The big problem, credit card fees. There's often a fixed fee, maybe 30 cents just to process it. So if the article's 25 cents, yeah, the publisher actually loses money. Plus, they worry tiny payments might steal away folks who'd otherwise pay for a full, valuable subscription, cannibalizing their best customers. So the whole way the free internet makes money is changing fast, shifting from selling eyeballs to selling real value and access.
Now, my one critique of this audio summary is that I had pushed a little bit harder on the micropayments because, yes, if you're going to use the credit card companies, you're toast because of their fees. But there are plenty of examples of like prepaid phones or your Orca card where you can put a chunk of money in and it can be decremented at small amounts. And basically, it came back with a good response in the original conversation that the publishers are much more interested in maximizing their what they call their customer lifetime value, and so they're not as motivated to let us get away with just paying a quarter for one article. So I thought that was pretty useful. Let's see, where do we want to go next? I think I'm going to shift back now. Oh, there's one I was going to show you a mind map. What was I looking at? What was good for that? Oh yeah, this one will work. This is a bunch of sources that I had put together. Some were articles, bookmarks, and so on. And I asked Notebook LM to create a mind map of that world. And so this is what a mind map looks like. It's tries to break things down into logical categories, basically building a tree of information. And you can expand the tree as far as you want. So AI applications and practical use. This is this is kind of an overview of AI that I was using as part of my preparation for these classes. And you can then dig down more deeply and expand different pieces and so on. So that's kind of a nice tool for organizing things, getting a handle on the structure of the data. So Notebook LM, I think, is a pretty nifty tool, and you can find all kinds of videos and articles by people saying, I'm using Notebook LM for all kinds of things. So there's one guy that doesn't ever look at YouTube videos anymore because he just feeds them into Notebook LM and lets it summarize them for him. And I'm starting to do that for the longer ones as well that I don't have time to look at. So it's a pretty good tool. And you can see over here that you have it can give you audio overviews. And I think this is all available in the free version too. There are some features that I've seen added recently, and I don't know if that's because of the pro level that I got with the Chromebook or not. But I think this is probably the same thing you would see. And you can ask the audio overview feature to be either brief, as I just did, or take on a critique role or a debate role. I haven't tried the debate role. That wasn't there last time I played. So I've used the deep dive a few times. And you can ask it for different links and tell it some things that you are particularly want it to focus on. So that's pretty cool. We'll also do a video overview, and you can ask it just to be an explainer of the concepts, and it'll create slides and so on. You can choose a style, and you can also just give it, here's the briefing book I want to be able to share with my colleagues or something like that. Mind map, I just showed you. Reports, absolutely. You can get all kinds of different reports, a briefing document, study guides, blog posts. You can get it to create flashcards or quizzes. So it's a lot of people are using it as a educational tool if they're in college or just trying to learn a new subject. It's really good for that. So I'm a fan. I think this is really a good tool that you should know about, and it's free. So next, I wanted to share some real life adventures with you. Let's see, illustrating some of the challenges. So I want to get this guy back here. All right, so this is Gemini again. And oh yes, there's one I wanted to share with you. Here's a case where I had an image, like a photograph of a family tree that had actually been created with Google Draw. And I wasn't sure I had access to the original. So I uploaded an image of that family tree diagram and said, can you reproduce this in Google Draw? And it assured me that, sure, that should be no problem. But in fact, it was not able to do that. And one of the things that I learned in doing the photo retouching, like of the Manx and other times, or the caveman with the sign, is that once you reach one of its walls, it has the tendency to say, yes, I understand what you need, and I will correct that. And here's the new version. And then you look at the new version, and it's exactly what the old version was, unchanged. So it had understood what you wanted it to change, but it was not able to do that. And that was the case in one of those images with the sign of the caveman, where I wanted it to readjust the position of the text so it was vertically aligned. And Gemini just finally said, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I tried it in ChatGPT, and it gave up after a while too. And each time apologizing profusely after having told me, yes, I fixed it, here's the new one. And it was just the same as the old one. But ChatGPT did something that Gemini did not, which was at the end said, would you like me to give you instructions on how to use a photo editor to achieve your goal? I can use Photopia, which is available for free online. And I said, yeah, that would be useful. And so it gave me the step-by-step instructions of how to use a photo editor to change the text on that sign, which I thought was a pretty nice consolation prize since it wasn't able to do it by itself. Let's see, what else have we got here? So there was a case where I was trying to find, yeah, here we go. I said, I'm trying to remember a quote from a famous British author. He wrote something about the naive person being the ultimate victor. Does that ring any bells for you? And Gemini nailed it, got it right off. It said, yeah, it's Chesterton. And I didn't actually say naivete, said the greenhorn is the ultimate victor and everything, etc. And that is, in fact, the quote I was trying to remember. So I asked a couple of the other AIs to do the same thing. And do I have those handy? I think it was Claude. Let's see if I can get that guy over here. Too much stuff in my windows here. So I'll just briefly note that I asked recently, where and when was Terence E. Gray of Seattle born? And several of them got that, where was he born, right immediately. They found my own website where it's right there on the About page, and correctly said that I couldn't find any public references for when he was born. Now, Claude had a little bit more trouble. It said, I found a reference to a Terence G. Charles, but not a Terence E. Gray. And then it fumbled around a little bit. And so I gave it a hint, said he's still alive and has a website. And then it said, I found a website for Terence D. Gray. But the results mostly show poor paint colors. So I gave it another hint. Maybe he goes by a nickname or diminutive. And so that was the breakthrough for Claude to be able to find my website, and it could cite the source at that point. Let's see, where was I? The case of the British author quote. Where is that? Can I find that here? I wanted to share it because it's a pretty good example of how these guys can get off track. Let's see, I'm not seeing it, but I'll just tell you what happened. I think it was Claude. It didn't ever find the Chesterton quote. It found another quote, I think it was by Adam Bennett, or what it asserted was the quote. And when I pressed for it, said, okay, so what's your source? And it said, well, it's showed up in various chat groups. Okay, so I said, what chat groups? What's your source? And went down this chain for a while. And finally it said, well, I'm afraid there's actually no sources that can corroborate what I told you. So that's a clue that these guys are not 100% on the factuality. So let's see, what else did I want to share with you on this subject? Let's get this out of the way. Oh, here's one thing. When I had a headlight go out on my Prius last year, and so I asked it what to do about it. I gave it the VIN number, and I said, I need three things: purchase information for replacement, advice on how to replace it, and where to find it. And it was very, very helpful, really useful. And I found that's true for a lot of something is broken kinds of scenarios. I have run into lots and lots of technical problems with computers or sound systems, et cetera, where I can describe what's going on in the situation, and it can give me, if not exactly the right answer, at least a direction, which is very useful. So I use these tools now kind of as my first go-to encyclopedia. I use Wikipedia a lot too, but sometimes their format is a little dense. So I will often start with one of these tools like Gemini or ChatGPT and ask a question. And usually it's not a high stakes thing, and I'm pretty comfortable with the answer. If it is high stakes, then as I said last week, trust a little, verify a lot, check your source. And in the case of some of these responses, you do have to be pretty careful. The claim is made by some people who know more about this than I do, that the advanced models that you have to pay for are much less likely to hallucinate. And I haven't been able to confirm or deny that claim or not. I've heard very mixed things about whether hallucinations are getting better or whether they're getting worse as these scale up and get larger. So that's a challenge that we just can't forget, because these models fundamentally are probability engines. They try to make the best guess for what they think is the right answer, and they have been trained to give you an answer and give you its best guess, rather than saying, I don't have a very clear winning probability or winning answer here, so I'm just going to guess. If they were trained differently to say, if I don't have pretty compelling evidence, I'm going to say I don't know. Sometimes they do, but not often enough. And so that's potentially something that could be better as training regimes get better. And again, I've seen the claim that the more advanced models that you have to pay for are better at this. I've also seen claims that it's not getting better. I consider it an unsolved problem. So what else do I want to share with you? We're getting toward the end of our time. Let's see if I had any other specific examples I wanted to touch. Yeah, I didn't find the Claude page I wanted to share. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, here it is. Here it is. I wanted to share this. I guess it was perplexity. Or was it? It was Microsoft Copilot. This is the one I wanted to share with you. So it says, I'm trying to remember a quote from a British author, something about naive person being the ultimate victor. Same prompt I gave to Gemini. And it came back, says, the quote you're thinking of is likely by Alan Bennett. The naive is the ultimate victor. And so I kept pressing, can you give me some context? And then it says, oh, I couldn't find the full passage. And then I said, what's your source? And said I wasn't able to locate a definitive source, but it appears in various quote collections and discussions online. And then I say, so you're hallucinating? It's a fair question. I appreciate the skepticism. I made a mistake by presenting the quote as confidently attributed to Alan Bennett without verifiable source. That's not ideal. While the quote appears in some online discussions and aligns with themes in Bennett's work, I couldn't find a definitive citation from his published writings. So I said, I would be happy if you could provide an actual source for that quote, regardless of attribution. And finally, it says, there's currently no verified source for the quote. And then it says something about, despite its circulation online, the phrase lacks a clear origin. I said, where is it circulating online? What is your source for saying that? You're absolutely right to press for clarity. I should have been more precise. That phrase appears in a few places, such as blog posts. So to be clear, I found no credible source for the quote. Provide a link to any one of the blog posts, quote aggregators, or discussion forums that contain the quote. If you cannot do that, you have moved from providing misinformation to disinformation. And so it goes on and says, you're right. I just didn't get it right. So it's always apologetic when you challenge it, but you do need to challenge it. That's for sure. Oh, here's one that was good. I had a friend send me an article from the White House done by I think it was the Cato Group, or no, I guess it was a Stanford conservative think tank on climate change. And my friend is kind of a climate denier. So I asked Gemini, how would you rate the following article on factuality? And it gave me what I thought was a very careful and plausible to me anyway, let me move that back in here. Oops, getting ahead of myself. Gemini, here you are. Okay. Yeah, so that's the question I asked. I uploaded the article and asked it to comment on how it rate its factuality, and gave a lot of pretty detailed places where it was weak, and said based on this analysis, it would be rated as highly questionable on factuality. So I think that I also put that in Notebook LM. Yeah, I don't see it at the moment, but we're running out of time now anyway. So I think we'll go to Q&A now. I covered most of these. I've used it to create a fiction story. I've used it to critique my writing. I know lots of people that do a first draft and ask for improvements. And as I mentioned, I found it very useful for technical problem solving, especially with different versions of computer systems and different versions of software, and also very useful for product comparisons. So I need to mention the LM Arena. That allows you to put in one prompt and it will, come on, get out of here. I'm trying to move it into the, we're back. I'm difficulty extracting it from my collection of windows. Anyway, the gist of it is that it will submit your prompt to multiple models, and then you can vote on which of them you think is better. So I submitted a set of 30 questions about AI to two different ones, and I got some pretty interesting results, which I'll put on my website when we're done with that. Last thing I would mention is that there's one of the newsletters I get, and I get a whole bunch of them now on AI, has a feature in each one where they include what they call the community AI workflows. So just as one example, they solicit these from their readers. And so there's a fellow in San Francisco who says, I created a Gemini gem, and a gem is just a sort of a macro. It's a canned prompt that you can use over and over again without having to type in the whole thing, called AI ML Tutor for helping him learn about AI and machine learning. It's instructed to provide answers at beginner level and increasing complexity, etc. Asked it to use metaphors, because that's the best way for me to learn, and explain concepts, create learning plans, etc., with external materials. So that's one example of how somebody has used Gemini. And I'm gonna skip over some of the success stories that I had. Most of the slides here are really pretty self-explanatory, and I want to get to the questions now. So you can look at these at your leisure in the slides. A lot of stuff happening in healthcare, some nice examples. This is a latest from David Baker's lab, another breakthrough from AI assisted development. Google's hurricane model was breathtakingly good this season, much better than the traditional ones. UK is going to try to reduce the use of live animals using AI. That's good news. This is an old one, but it does show that there are companies that are really getting some measurable improvement in use of AI. And Google has a bunch of success stories that you can go find there. And I'm going to skip over the stunning failures. You can read those if you ask me for more information later. And so the wrap up, verify, and for bias issues, critique, and privacy, assume it's public. Don't put anything private on these systems. And one of our best instructors in CR gave a talk on history of Russia, and he asked ChatGPT for research on the Ottoman Empire, and this is what he got in response. So just be warned. And this was a fun thing when someone used Gemini to fact check an answer from ChatGPT, and the strategy was to reduce hallucinations. And I'll come back to that in a minute. But ChatGPT was pretty well roasted by Gemini. It says it gave you plausible sounding text that looks like a real list of citations, but is corrupted, recycled, and a partially fabricated mess. You would fail an academic assignment if you use these citations without verifying them, because many of them are simply wrong. So this is kind of reminiscent of spy versus spy, or the generative adversarial networks we talked about last week. But it's definitely a strategy people are talking about using more to try to reduce the hallucination problem. So my key takeaways: don't be intimidated, try it, don't give it personal or sensitive info. I recommend creating an account so you can save its history, because I found it's useful to be able to go back sometimes, and start a new chat when you're actually changing topics so that you can find them again. And again, trust a little, verify a lot. So over to questions. Let's see where we left off here. Sorry, let's see. Connolly's most recent Lincoln Lawyer novel. Okay, recommendation. Sorry about no Terry tunes during the break. Problem of trustworthiness with content being generated on social media. For me, I can see it being used to create material that can cast doubt on real evidence of guilt by an individual, and then they end up avoiding being convicted of a crime because of the fact fuzziness that AI can get you. Yeah, it's actually called the liar's dividend. I think I've got a slide or two on that for next week. When you flood the zone with synthetic or fake news, then when factual stuff comes along, it's easy for you to say, oh, that's just fake too. And we've seen examples of that already. Steve Jobs had a vision for the iPhone that it would become an everyday tool and would be as ubiquitous and easy to use as a toaster. Do you think AI will reach this vision? Well, I'm not sure that iPhones are always as easy to use as a toaster, but yes, I do believe that AI will be as ubiquitous, and it will be easy to use. The question is, how trustworthy will the results be? And a question here: ChatGPT hallucinates 40% of the time. That sounds huge and makes it very untrustworthy. I think it depends a lot on the kinds of things you're doing, but it just underscores the importance of, if it's something that needs to be right, you have to check the facts. And I find it useful to submit the same question to different chatbots and compare answers. Haven't always done the experiment I just showed you where you give one chatbot's answer to another and have it critique it. But these things are actually pretty good at critiquing documents or critiquing your own work. You can ask it to take an adversarial or a critic's position and try to poke holes in your reasoning. And that's a very useful thing that it can do. Where's the evolution of AI on the Gartner hype cycle? Are we nearing the peak of inflated expectations? Actually, the generative AI was at the peak last year, 2024, and this year it's halfway down the slope into the sea of disillusionment or whatever they call it. It's hard to believe that those super thirsty massive gigafactories in Illinois will maintain concern for local, rural, and small town water needs in the decades to come. It's clear that the gigafactories are going to respond to economics, not goodwill. And so it's up to the local politicians and regulators to put limits on what they can do. It is possible, and I've got a slide on this for next week when we talk about resources used by these systems. It is possible to build a data center that recycles all the water and doesn't take from them, or at least doesn't take more than it puts back. It's costly to do that, and you have to have energy to pull the heat out of the water, but it can be done. So I think it's up to the local people in those areas to push back. And the same is true on the electricity requirements. Okay, we have an informational note on Colossus 2 and the reference to the Forbin project. Question, how do you access Notebook LM? Is it a paid subscription or free? It is free. And you can go to notebooklm.google.com. I believe that is the correct one. Yes, notebooklm.google.com. Let's see. When you say check your sources, can you ask your AI tool where its answer is coming from? Absolutely. The good ones will even have a little button you can click on that says sources, and you can find out exactly where they got it. So by all means, you can ask that. Okay. What's the difference between using one of the various chat bots you're discussing, for example, Notebook LM, and just doing a Google search, replacing the light bulb on your Prius? So Notebook LM is not strictly speaking a chat bot. It's a more special tool that does other things that the chatbots don't normally do. But the base question of when would you use a chatbot as opposed to just a normal Google search, for example, like in my light bulbs. And the answer that I've come up with is the issue of condensing responses into a coherent answer, and the ability to give it things like a VIN number for the specifics on my particular car, or the ability to give it a photograph of something you're looking at and you don't know what it is. And yes, with Google Lens, you can do that too. But it's in my experience, I'm using the AI stuff more. And if you do a normal search with Google now, unless you've gone to efforts to turn it off, you're going to get the AI summary at the top anyway. And most of the time, I refer to that. And sometimes I'll go down and look at the actual links and go deeper. So in a way, Google's giving you both options in their normal default behavior now. Will we learn how to do effective queries in this class? Well, I was trying to give you some hints on what kind of prompts to give these things. I apparently have failed in that goal. What I can tell you is starting with some of those basics that I outlined in the beginning of this class, where you provide context and you give it a role to play, and you are precise in the kinds of outputs and formats that you want, that will go a long way. But I would suggest you could either your favorite chatbot, or you could go do a search on the web or within YouTube, and you will find hundreds of here are the best prompts ever for different classes of usage. So there's a lot of people that will tell you the secrets of chatbot prompting, including there's active groups that will tell you the magic incantation or prompt that you have to give to a chatbot to get to its soul and actually be talking to its real live sentient. Please remember from last week, that's nonsense, but there is an active set of people that believe it's real. So I think I've exhausted the queries here, and thank you for your attention, and we will see you next week.